Welcome to the Unstoppable Recording Machine Podcast. And now your host, EYAL Levy.
Welcome to the URM Podcast. Thank you so much for being here. It's crazy to think that we are now on our 7th year. Don't ask me how that all just flew by, but it did. Man, time moves fast. And it's only because of you, the listeners. If you'd like us to stick around another 7 years, and there's a few simple things you can do that would really help us out. I would endlessly appreciate if you would, number 1, share our episodes with your friends. Number 2, post our episodes on your Facebook and Instagram and tag me at EYAL Levy URM Audio and at URM Academy, and of course, our guest. And number 3, leave us reviews and 5-star reviews wherever you can. We especially love iTunes reviews. Once again, thank you for all the years and years of loyalty. I just want you to know that we will never charge you for this podcast, and I will always work as hard as possible to improve the episodes in every single way. All we ask in return is a share, a post, and tag us. Oh, and one last thing. Do you have a question you would like me to answer on an episode? I don't mean for a guest. I mean for me. It can be about anything. Email it to me at eyal@urm.academy. That's EYAL@urm.academy. There's no .com on that. It's exactly the way I spelled it. And use the subject line, Answer Me Eyal. All right, let's get on with it. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the URM Podcast. I'm EYAL Levy. And today we have my favorite kind of episode, which is the producer and artist tag team, where we talk about what they did together. And today we've got Mark Heylmun, who is a guitarist in Suicide Silence, and Taylor Young, who produced and mixed their brand new album, Remember, You Must Die, which I love. I've heard it and I love it. And in this episode, we'll take a deep dive into making the album, discussing their creative process, recording techniques, and some challenges that they faced along the way. All right, let's get into it. So Mark and Taylor, welcome to the URM Podcast.
What's up?
What's going on?
You know, a whole lot. It's been an insane year so far. It's been an insane year. But what about you guys? Like, how's life going with this new Suicide Silence?
Well, I've been doing a lot of press, so I'm very prepared to talk about this album.
Okay, I don't want to talk about that same shit that you've probably already said like 19 different ways.
This record's so heavy. It's the heaviest thing we've ever done.
The heaviest one yet.
Adjective.
Everyone's gonna love it.
I mean, like, how brutal is the workload right now for you as far as supporting it?
Not as much as you'd think, because we don't have tour till April. So pretty much I'm just doing like 2-3 hours of press every day. So I guess it's every day. That's it. There's that. Yeah.
That's a good amount.
It's cool too, because I mean, when did we finish the album? I don't even really know. April last year?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's been done and sitting and now talking to people that have heard it. It's kind of cool. It's a refreshing, we were all super stoked, I think, when we were done. So there's been plenty of time that has passed, and now it's kind of juicing it back up.
You're like, oh yeah, this thing is sick.
Oh yeah, right. Dude, these songs are pretty ripping.
That's right. We weren't nuts. Okay, so I don't remember the exact time period. I know it was last year sometime. Maybe around October? I don't know. It was sometime around 22. You sent me the unmastered Capable of Violence, and I was like, yes, fuck yes, this is great. I was really stoked to hear it. I listened to it like 10 times in a row that night. So thank you for letting me hear it. Whenever I feel like there's a good song, I'm stoked already. But I was stoked also on the production, like how much the production worked for the song. I loved hearing you guys like that. Kind of like, I don't want to say again, because it's not like, every record has its own thing, but I like hearing you guys presented like that. It really works. So I was super stoked, and Taylor had just kind of started to come onto my radar around then. So like I heard about Taylor through you guys, actually. Taylor, because I knew you were working on Suicide Silence. That's why I invited you on the podcast last time. And once I heard the Capable of Violence mix, I was like, okay, this makes perfect sense. This is a rad pairing.
Taylor understood the assignment, as the kids say.
Yeah.
All I know is chug.
Understood the assignment. It's like this weird thing because I feel like, and I'm curious what you guys think, for this kind of music, it's not something you should really have to overthink, right? It's like either you kind of get it or you kind of don't. But at the same time, did you need to discuss it? Like, did you need to discuss what the sonic, I guess, footprint or signature of this record was going to be?
We did initially, and I think we even did more so after that first single, because it was kind of like we took that as that was the blueprint, and we were like, how do we advance it from there? And it was mostly guitar tone, and switching to a different drummer kind of did a lot of that by itself too. And yeah, it's a little smoother, but it's still aggro as hell, and that's all I am good at in general.
That's your pocket.
Yeah. So, but at the same time, like there are a lot of different ways to go, especially in their world. Like there's a lot of different types of this style now, and it was kind of like, which way are they going to go? And it's kind of the way that nobody's going, because everybody's either crystal clear or kind of dirty, but still very hi-fi. And I think that the root of the style is the realness and the aggression. So we made it that.
That kind of dirty but hi-fi, I call it like car test mixes or something.
Yeah.
It would be like if I was trying to sell you a system for your car.
It just hits every frequency.
Yeah.
It's pink noise.
I mean, it's impressive. It's not easy to pull that off at all.
It's its own craft for sure.
I used to be more, I guess, disparaging of different styles that I didn't personally like as much until doing Nail the Mix and seeing how much skill goes into every single one of these subgenres. And then also seeing the students try to do it every single month since 2015 and just realizing that, no, for something to sound that polished, this genre of music is noise. Like, It's just layered noise. Like, to get it to sound polished is quite a feat. But I also think that taking this genre of music and managing to have it sound both like a song, but also sound fucking wild is this whole other skill set, which I think you guys accomplished on this.
Yeah, I think so too. Really, we just kind of took it to making the band just a rock band. Not a rock band, but like, a band that is playing together and making it feel like that, which I think that's a rarity these days a bit, unless it's like certain other types of music have that. But I think for heavy stuff, it's very rare for it to feel like one thing.
Yeah, it's not typical.
Yeah, for us, we've always tried to be what would be considered a real band.
Well, I'm not saying I never said you weren't a real band.
Oh, I'm not saying you're saying anything. I'm saying it was a common goal, and something that I feel like needs to be said about like the talking about this record before we did it and all that is something that I think is badass, is that Taylor basically said he wouldn't do the record unless he could mix it too.
Oh yeah.
Which I think at first we were like, damn, this guy's bold. Like, that's badass. And like kind of thought it was cool. Because of that, there was this like massive trust and like a common intention that we all knew we were on, and just set us on the path of like, all right, let's just make this sound insane and crushing and give Taylor, the keys or hands on the steering wheel, and to have a producer say, I won't do this record unless I could do all of it. We're like, okay, this guy's sick. Like
that can go two directions, because I've experienced that where it was a bad thing, but I think that it's either a great thing or a terrible thing. There's not much middle ground there. Taylor, I'm wondering why was that your approach, or is that always your approach?
I always kind of think ahead to mixing. There's a part of me that feels like incomplete. Like, I like to complete the mission, and the mission is how it sounds as well as here's the songs. I could work on just here's the songs, but I also like working on how it sounds, and not being able to follow through, or like having a vision and losing the vision after, we complete tracking is like a little bit scary. But at the same time, I do it all the time. Like the new Drain record, I didn't mix that. And then the new Military Gun record, I didn't mix that. So it was kind of just like I feel like I am going to make it more aggressive than anybody else would. Now, I'm open to it for the next record, maybe.
Oh, really?
That's me saying that for the first time out loud.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
But what is it about them specifically that you're like, it's either mix or nothing?
I think it was partially it being like the first big ass shit I'm going to do. So I'm going to do it. And if you don't want me to do it, that's fine. But at the same time, I was kind of like, I can do it if you let me.
Mhm.
Trust me. And they did. And I love these guys.
And that was something that we knew too. We're like, is this the biggest record that Taylor's ever done, maybe? And he's about to say he wouldn't do it unless he could mix it. And that just seems so badass. It seems so cool. We're like, oh, fuck.
It is.
All right, like, that's sick. Then he's the guy.
Do you consider yourself risk averse, or are you the type of person that leans into risk?
I didn't look at it as a risk, really. It wasn't meant to be like a bluff. You know what I mean? It was kind of just like, if I'm going to do it, I want to do it all.
No, but there is the risk that they could have just been like,
But to me, it wasn't a risk. It would be like, okay, that's fine.
fair enough.
Yeah. I don't approach records first as like a job. For me, it's still at the core, it's art. And that's what I lean towards first. Like, I'm not worried so much about the semantics before I am the product and the music. And so it was just kind of like, that's what I would like to contribute.
That makes sense. I mean, that's how you saw yourself fitting in. And either they saw you fitting in like that or they didn't.
Exactly.
Why try to force something where you're not all aligned?
Right. I feel like we had the chat and then it was like, cool, you got it a day later or something like that. There was no like overlong deliberation about it.
We literally had lunch after we met with you, and we're just like, dude, that guy's sick. Like, he's totally the guy. But also with that said, I mean, I'm sure me and Eddie told Taylor when we met him, it's like, you've been on the radar of ours for quite some time. And like, just kind of been listening to everything he's done and hearing everything. So we kind of knew, like, if we ever do a record with Taylor, like, he's probably going to make it sound just ridiculous. And, you know, he's underground, you know, even in our scene, I feel like a little more under the cut.
Yeah, I think most of the comments are, who?
Yeah. And then, but then there's the people that are like, oh shit, like Taylor did it. I want to hear that.
That's sick.
Yeah, it's super cool. But yeah, it was immediate. We knew we'd been talking to a couple different people, and yeah, once we talked to you and saw your space and everything, it was well apparent that, yeah, you know, heavy as possible.
I was equipped for Chug.
Yeah, you know, if people don't know, like, Taylor's studio's the pit, and it's the slogan or the ethos is the home of the perfect palm mute.
That's correct.
It's fucking sick.
Mark, you guys have worked with lots of great producers and mixers over the years.
A plethora of legends, I would say.
Yeah, seriously, like,
We've been lucky been able to do that.
it's been quite some heavy hitters. And so that, like, having all that experience, how did you guys come to the decision that you're going to go with your gut on this and not go with, like, I guess, I don't want to say risk-free because nothing's risk-free, but like, there's a reason for why labels like to go to their go-to mixers is they have a track record. They work well together. They know that in general, they're going to get something that they're going to be able to work with. On your end, like, what was the decision-making process like about not going with some huge name?
Well, Suicide Silence as a whole, I think we're not adverse to risk and adverse to trying different things, as a lot of people might know. And I think that we kind of were going all over the place. We had a bunch of different ideas of who we were going to talk to and, you know, who would be good to make this record, which we knew we were going to do what this record ended up being, more of like a old school, kind of death metal influenced, raw, riff oriented record. Yeah, there was a bunch of different names tossed out and some crazy ideas, and pretty much since we knew that what it was going to be, and kind of could all as a band envision what it needed to sound like. For me, personally, just getting in and yeah, communicating with Taylor and hearing him talk, like it was apparent we were going to be able to just have good sessions and work together and not be working with not to knock anybody, all these great producers that we've worked with, but we always were looking at ourselves as kind of young and working with people that maybe were going to teach us something or we needed to learn new things from. But at this point, it was like, let's work with somebody that we respect and let's work with somebody that's kind of our age and look at it more as like this group project that we're all working on, as opposed to trying to find someone that's gonna, I don't know, unlock something that we are,
level up the band.
Yeah, yeah. It's like, it's where we're at. It's not like we're not trying to level up or reach another stage, but it's more like,
No, but I know what you mean.
Yeah, we just want to refine this thing that is already, pretty well defined. So, and Taylor was the perfect dude for it, really. And I think all of us were very much on the same page. The heaviest possible thing, I just keep saying it, we said it from the beginning of the writing sessions that shit's supposed to be heavy as possible. And Taylor is heavy as possible.
It's the mantra for this and the next record.
Exactly.
It's cool, I think, for listeners of this podcast to hear that, because question that always comes in, and I'm sure you guys get asked this too by people, is like, how do I do X in music? Like, how do I get signed, or how do I get signed band to come to my studio or whatever? And just for people to hear that, yeah, it is possible to just put yourself out there and let, say what you want and let your work speak for itself, and good things can happen. It doesn't have to be something unattainable.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's part of why I always say, like, it should be record first. Like, it's not, as soon as you make it about, I need a manager and all this extra shit, that's if you're starting out that way, that's the wrong way to think. You can't set it off by doing that. You got to set it off by writing dope shit first.
Those other things come in once basically the songs have created a situation for you where you can no longer handle everything.
Exactly.
You as a producer, do you typically approach bands, or do bands typically approach you? How does it work for you in general?
I have never cold called a band in my life. Actually, that's not true. I cold called one band that was like already talking about coming to me, I guess. We had kind of had a back and forth slightly, and I was just like, hey, let's do it. And now I've done 10 records with that guy. So, but generally, no, people come to me.
Yeah, it's interesting because, like, I see people talking about, like, running ads for their studio or productions, and I'm like, man, I don't know a single person who's making sick records who's ever done that.
Yeah, that's the problem, is I think that people need to be a little more self-aware. It's like, hey, if people aren't coming to me, maybe I'm not making dope shit, so maybe I should get better at it.
That's tough, though. That's a lot harder to swallow than Facebook's this evil entity that limits my reach, and it's Facebook's fault that, that no one's seeing anything about my studio. I hear that a lot, but in reality, I think that there's a pretty like repeatable and like tried and true way that bands end up going with producers, and it's almost always they're listening to music as music listeners, liking the way something sounds, and over time, like, the same name will pop up on several things that they like. Then they'll ask their friends who have worked with that person what it was like, and then go from there. And that's basically almost always how it works. Is it starts with somebody's work and someone genuinely liking somebody's work and learning more about it because of the work. It's not because of an ad or something like that.
It's almost always that. Like, I've never run an ad. Like, I honestly don't even know how to do that on Facebook. But like, that shouldn't be what is selling your shit. Your product should be selling it. And I think the best advice would also be is just like, usually people who do this are somewhat musical, go play in bands, or like go to shows and talk to bands and record shit for free. Like, make something sick before you make it about, oh, my studio, my business.
Well, I know that when I heard that you were from your former band, like, you immediately got points with me, even though I hadn't heard your work yet. Like, when Mark had told me that they were going with you, and then I knew your background a little bit, I was like, okay, like, it's probably going to be cool. And it's because I like your former band. And so I think that that's actually putting music out into the world is like one of the best ways, especially for people who like live in a place where there aren't many bands geographically close to them.
Oh, then
like,
it's
that's
easy.
That's one thing that you do have available to you is the internet, and you can put music out and you can do your best to have it be heard. And I've noticed that having music out is really one of the primary ways that new producers get discovered
Easily.
through their own music.
Yeah.
I wonder what you guys think of this as far as advice. Getting to know A&R people as a producer, not necessarily bands, but guys out there that are working with tons of bands as a producer. Wouldn't, allying with A&R people be decent advice for people?
Sort of. I think that happens later.
Yeah, exactly.
I think if that happens too early, you
Get put in a box.
you get put in a box, or you end up doing one thing, and then the guy, you only get to do that kind of thing, or something like that. Like, I think you end up with the relationships with bands after doing the record too. And honestly, if you do one record for an A&R, that band, if they love it, they're going to tell the next band, and then you may end up with more stuff. So I think either way, it ends with bands being stoked.
I do remember from my band's Roadrunner days that they very much had there was like a gravitational pull almost towards who they wanted to work with. And like, for instance, with our first record that came out through them, it had to be remixed. And there was a budget, and there were several options, sick options from the metal production community who would have done it within the budget, but Monty Connor specifically, wanted Colin Richardson, which, no complaints here. In 2005, Colin Richardson,
Crushing.
signed me the fuck up.
Totally.
But Monty was willing to completely blow the budget, blow right past it on a band that has zero track record, because he was so comfortable working with Colin, and just that was his go-to guy, Colin and Andy back then. And I've noticed that you can get to that point with A&R people to where they would rather go with you than anyone else, and will try to steer things in that direction just because it's been so reliable for them. But I feel like that relationship also has to just develop organically.
Yeah. Can't force anything.
No, you can't force it. There's the Colin and Monty relationship from back in the day was totally an organic thing. And it also, the quality of Colin's work had everything to do with it.
Yeah.
If Colin had sucked,
Monty wouldn't have spent all your money.
No,
and more.
No, hey man, I was fine with it. I was my thoughts on Roadrunner the whole entire time was, we're going to be dropped. So before, as we were getting signed, I was like,
let's spend it because we'll never see it anyway.
Yeah, we're going to get dropped. Whether it's after this record or on the next one, we're getting dropped by Roadrunner. There's absolutely no way. They're signing us way too soon. We haven't done anything, and they're going to be expecting shit that is just not realistic. We're going to get dropped. Let's make the most of it.
Yeah, what a sick
Colin
mindset.
Richardson, let's do it. It's realistic.
That's so cool. That just means go balls to the wall. Who gives a shit? I love that.
Yeah, fuck it.
Hey, you want to do Ozfest? Yes. Rack up hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt with us? Yes. Because I know you're going to drop us in 6 months.
So cool.
Fuck it. Let's do this shit. Whereas I would not advise that for
a band that's not willing to get dropped or something.
Yeah.
Don't let them spend all their money.
You don't want 6 figures if 20 people like your band.
Yeah, not a great idea. But I have seen in the current age, not the common age, that there are still those A&R and mixer relationships. But something that's really different now is that there's more options. Certain labels have always just let the bands decide, but the labels are much more open to letting the bands just handle that side of things, I think, and then, or even letting the bands do it themselves, like just all that stuff that was like labels were not typically okay with back in the day. I think they're okay with now, and so A&R I've noticed is more of a support role than it was back in the day.
Yeah, a little less hands-on.
Yeah.
I don't know about Mike Gitter's pretty hands-on.
He's intense.
Mike Gitter is hands-on.
Shout out Mike Gitter, who's our A&R. He was calling me like 5 times a day while we were recording that record.
Yeah, that was a lot. It was for good reason.
He abused it because he knew I would pick up the phone.
But he's from the old school. He is from that old school Roadrunner mentality of A&R really being involved. But they knew what they were doing. Like there's this like, I feel like unless your A&R is good, they shouldn't be doing that, because I've seen, I don't know if you guys have seen, but I've seen A&Rs like basically drive the car right off a cliff.
Oh, yeah.
By micromanaging.
His calls were mostly just like, everybody happy? Cool. Good. Let's keep going.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did a lot of cool stuff. He had people calling us, like talking to us about calling Eddie and giving him support and advice. Like Mike Gitter is, some people might think it's a lot, but to me, I'm like, dude, I've never had anybody that's so hands-on like this. I actually liked it.
It's hands-on in a caring way.
Yeah. Yeah. And because I mean, we go so far back. I've known the guy for almost 20 years. So to be working with him, this is our first record to be working with him. So it was cool that he was that hands-on.
It's interesting because sometimes you hear bands say that, the further in their career they get, the less they want that. Like the more they're like, this is how we do things. Like, why are you getting involved in our shit? This is how we do. Like,
I think we're so the opposite of that. I think that we're so like, even though we've been doing it however long, I think we have the ultimate imposter syndrome where we feel like we need people to tell us that it's good, and we need a little bit of coddling. That's totally admitting that, I wouldn't have said that a long time ago, but it's true now, like having people that care is super important, especially, our band, people didn't know what to do with us. They just let us do whatever we wanted early on, so now that we're a little bit older, now it's kind of like we are looking for that advice and looking for, any sort of nugget of knowledge from people that have been doing this longer than us. So yeah, working with Mike Gitter was great.
It makes sense. And especially someone like Mike, like he has been around long enough to like know, like what is it that like these bands that stick it out, like, and survive, like what do they have in common? Like start seeing certain behaviors. It's like, oh, I've seen that like 19 times and every time it ends up destroying the band or is a shitty decision. Like it's good to have that kind of perspective on your team.
100%. And especially working with anybody, the way that I do it is like, if they're giving you advice, it's almost like really keep track of what advice they're giving and what you're taking and what happens from that advice. I know that should just be a given, but it's like,
no, you're right.
And yeah, with Mike, it's like pretty much all of his advice, it would always turn out good. So it's like, I want to hear what you got to say.
That is wise. Actually keeping track of if the advice works or not. But what's interesting about that is that means you're actually following people's advice, which is already pretty rare. I've noticed that most people who ask for advice are not actually asking for advice. They're asking for an opportunity to have you validate them.
Yeah, looking for affirmation.
Yeah, basically. They're not actually asking for help. So I've noticed that like actual genuine request for advice or like situation like that, it's pretty rare.
I'm not saying I ever ask Mike Gitter for advice. He just gives it.
Or he offered it, I'm sure. But
That's not true. That's a joke.
No, but still, the fact you were open to it, that in and of itself is just very, very rare, I've noticed in music.
Yeah, probably. I think most musicians are hard-headed and think they know everything. I'm victim of that every once in a while too, and hopefully people around me say, "Hey, shut the fuck up, you're wrong," which happens too.
I'll let you know.
Yeah, Taylor. Yeah, I remember Taylor told me I was wrong a couple times.
Hey, everybody. If you're enjoying this podcast, then you should know that it's brought to you by URM Academy. URM Academy's mission is to create the next generation of audio professionals by giving them the inspiration and information to hone their craft and build a career doing what they love. You've probably heard me talk about Nail the Mix before, and if you're a member, you already know how amazing it is. At the beginning of the month, Nail the Mix members get the raw multi-tracks to a new song by artists like Lamb of God, Angels and Airwaves, Knock Loose, Opeth, Meshuggah, Bring Me the Horizon, Gojira, Asking Alexandria, Machine Head, and Papa Roach, among many, many others. Over 60 at this point. Then at the end of the month, the producer who mixed it comes on and does a live streaming walkthrough of exactly how they mix the song on the album and takes your questions live on air. And these are guys like TLA, Will Putney, Jens Bogren, Dan Lancaster, Tui Madsen, Andrew Wade, and many, many more. You'll also get access to MixLab, which is our collection of dozens of bite-sized mixing tutorials that cover all the basics, as well as Portfolio Builder, which is a library of pro-quality multi-tracks cleared for use in your portfolio, so your career will never again be held back by the quality of your source material. And for those of you who really want to step up their game, we have another membership tier called URM Enhance, which includes everything I already told you about and access to our massive library of fast tracks, which are deep, super detailed courses on intermediate and advanced topics like gain staging, mastering, low end, and so forth. It's over 500 hours of content, and man, let me tell you, this stuff is just insanely detailed. Enhanced members also get access to one-on-ones, which are basically office hour sessions with us, and Mix Rescue, which is where we open up one of your mixes and fix it up and talk you through exactly what we're doing at every step. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, if you're ready to level up your mixing skills in your audio career, head over to urm.academy to find out more.
Before starting URM, Finn McKenty, who is like director of operations at URM, he and we like had several things that we tried to do, like false starts. And one was called Unstoppable Killing Machine, and which is a way cooler name than Unstoppable Recording Machine, but just couldn't keep that name for like for a recording school. Like it's just won't work.
Selling the wrong thing.
Yeah, exactly. So Unstoppable Killing Machine, the whole idea was we're going to help bands. We're going to work with bands and not manage them or anything, but like help them make better decisions. And that was a total fail. And I figured that like we can really help people make good decisions because we've made good decisions and bad decisions and have like time logged in the industry, like from several different angles, like can really like help make some decisions. That fell on its face so hard. It was such a fail. And it was because bands did not want to hear anything from anybody. Like they felt like they knew how to do their shit. We very quickly were like, hell no, we're not going to be giving bands any advice. Let's rethink this whole thing.
You end up babysitting.
Yeah.
Bands think they know what they want and they want it now.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. That would be part of it too, is like they would think that by talking to us that we were supposed to get them results or something, but then they wouldn't actually go do any of the stuff that we suggested they go do. So it was like, this is going to lead to some bad feelings where they're going to feel like they got ripped off because like none of this shit that we talked about happened, but then they're not going to go do any of the stuff we talked about because they know better. Fuck this.
It's lose-lose.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's, so actually just hearing that you're open to what Mike had to say is really, really cool. And Taylor,
well, it's also so that I could throw in his face if he's wrong later, you know? Got to have that ammo.
That's win-win.
Yeah, that's a total win.
Taylor, on your end, do you feel like that's ever part of your job as a producer? like working with bands on any sort of decision making? Because I know some producers do think that that's part of their job, and I think it's debatable.
Sometimes I actually manage a couple bands, so I would say that I save most of my advice for them. But occasionally, here and there, I wouldn't say it's part of the job. It would be more extracurricular. But sometimes it'll be like, well, what should we do with this record after? And I'll do a minor outline or reach out to labels and things like that. As far as like overlong advice, I'll help with like making sure they don't take a bad deal here and there, picking the right tours and things like that. And I would say a lot of them still don't like to listen. I advised against a guest vocal recently that they did not take my advice.
What was your thinking?
Just that it was like too separate in a way that like a young band maybe isn't going to gain from, and it might actually like stain them a little bit or put them in a certain box that they're like nowhere near, and it would like only hurt them in the long run. Not to say that the person who was doing it was bad or the music they make is bad. It was just like something that just didn't fit.
Yeah.
They didn't want to hear it, but and that's okay. It was because ultimately it's their art and music, and that's what's most important.
From my perspective, Taylor likes to preserve the cool. That's where his advice usually comes from.
It's cool. Shit's cool.
He wants shit to be cool. If it's not cool, like it's not, Taylor's going to advise against it.
Yeah.
It's generally good advice.
Being cool is fucking cool.
But it's a natural thing, though. It's not like a forced cool.
No.
I realized that when we were writing lyrics and working on things, and it was almost like you questioned, because I'm Lord of Cheese. Like some of my lyrics go far beyond cheese, and Taylor would.
But you have good ideas, like I can decorn a little bit, but it's like
decorn.
Overall, we decorn just a bit, not
decorning,
both kinds of decorning. Sometimes you just need an outside perspective.
Yeah, absolutely,
but not a lot. I would say that your lyrics are generally pretty spectacular.
Don't need much decorning.
No, just a trim the hedges of corn.
That's actually like what I think producers should bring to the table is stuff like that, like helping bands present the best version of themselves and get rid of the stuff that's not necessarily helpful or that's just excess.
Yeah, absolutely. There are aspects of it too where it's like, oh, this lyric is insane. We should actually lean into that because that is the right thing. Like, I feel like there's like one or two lines on this record where it's like, I want to say you were like, is that too insane? I'm like, no, let's lean into that because that's nuts. And so it's kind of just finding the balance of like, what is Korn in relation to the band? It doesn't have to, it's not super black and white.
I mean, you said it during the sessions. You're like, oh, that's kind of cheesy, but you guys are the guys that wrote You Only Live Once.
Yeah, sometimes it's okay for I would say that's the bar. Like YOLO is the bar. If we're going into YOLO but kill your grandma, no, let's keep it to YOLO.
It's a gut feeling thing though, right?
It's definitely not something I have to think about. It's kind of like I just think if I get the fucking heebie-jeebies, then maybe let's cut it.
Yeah.
Or as I like to say, I get the CBGBs.
That's an interesting thing in terms of trust because I've noticed that there's been times in musical situations, either as a producer or as a band member, where there's been something where it just like rubs me wrong. Like I'm just like that, just like, it's kind of embarrassing and I don't want anything to do with that. And
that's partially taste.
Yes.
Something is maybe not objectively wrong, and then there's
taste.
How you feel about it, yeah.
Well, then that's the problem. The problem is when people start arguing about the technical reasons for why it's right, and you can only respond with, but it just sucks.
But I just don't like it.
I know, you're right. It's played well, and like it does all the right stuff, but it's wrong. You got to like trust me.
Yeah. Doesn't feel good.
No, it's like, it's this weird thing because it does need to just go on trust, because there's no like actual metric for that kind of stuff. There's no, you can't like argue it in court or something. You can only say, feel weird about this part. It's not right.
Yeah. Taste is a big part of it.
In our world, if that's happening, it's like, well, then do something better or shut up. That's the Suicide Silence way. Like, oh, that doesn't feel right to you? Well, what do you got that's better?
And then I take the guitar.
Yeah, exactly. One of the songs on this record, I had a riff that I liked. I still like it, but I remember Garza going, I don't know, there's just something hokey about that. And I was like, ooh. I was like, well, what do you got better? And then he played something better.
There you go.
But hold on. What if he said that's hokey, but he didn't have something better? We just leave something hokey?
I guess it's circumstantial. If that riff, I liked that riff. I can remember exactly what it is now.
How's it go?
It's, yeah, how's it go? Somebody give me a morphine milkshake. If anybody gets that reference, you're awesome. But no, that the verse of God Be Damned, and it was like a way thrashier, almost like metalcore-y kind of riff that wasn't exactly that Suicide Silence sounding, but it was still cool and fit, and I liked it. And basically, you know, if Garza wouldn't have had something that was better pretty much right there on the spot, I probably would have taken it and sat with it and been like, okay, Garza thinks this is hokey. How can I alter this or rethink this and, you know, be a good collaborator? Because that's also something, I mean, God, if you're writing music, you better learn to take people's constructive criticism and also be aware that sometimes they're speaking purely from taste.
Yeah. One thing, man, that I have like now, after having taken like a hiatus from making music and now making it again and just having this perspective of like having a lot of time to think about the past, there are some things that to this day from like, say, from our self-titled record that I hated when in the studio. I was like, this sucks. It's like cringe. And I let it go. And I hear it now and I'm like, ugh, why did I back down? Like, this sucks. Like, I'm the only one who saw it and should have stuck to my guns on it. And so now I have this attitude of like, if someone is feeling that way, doesn't matter who it is. Could be Krim, could be me, could be Sean, doesn't matter. If one of us has this like, ugh, I can't explain why, just know and not feeling it, even if they don't have a better idea, like, should probably trust that something's wrong with the part. Because I've just noticed, like, a decade or more later, those parts still bother me, those parts that I let go.
Yeah, and I have an outlook on that. Like, if something like that comes up, I say, if there's a person in here that cannot live with a moment, let's fix it. It's usually Dan Kenny, and we usually fix it. But it's like, if this is going to eat at you forever, let's do it. It's fine. Or we'll pretend to do it and trick him.
Yeah, but you can't pretend on a lyric.
You can't pretend on a lyric. There's probably one or two lines that we bought him on and that they remained.
Oh, so many.
Yeah. But sometimes Dan Kenny's wrong. That's all it is.
Dan, two things, Kenny.
Mm-hmm. Okay, two things.
That's the problem, is like that word, no one's always right. So like when you get that feeling and you're like, oh, this has got to go, and everyone's disagreeing with you, it's like, then you got to ask yourself, am I wrong? Like, am I just being nuts? Or are they all like deaf? They're like, they've got temporary deafness, like they're taste deaf temporarily.
There's definitely a little bit of both all the time.
It's hard to know when are you right and when you're being nuts.
Yeah, that's my job.
True. That's why you got to trust your producer.
Mm-hmm.
When we work with a producer, you better be looking at that producer like he's a member of your band, or you shouldn't be working with them anyway.
Yeah.
Just for that.
If it's like, no, shut up. No. It's like, what?
How deep do you get into the songs? Or is it different depending on the band?
Different depending on the band. For Suicide, I was there the last couple practices, and we switched up a couple things before preliminary tracking and kind of decided not to make a big grid map and all this shit because Ernie's such a rock solid drummer that I was like, I think we can just make this feel like a band. We don't need to computerize it. And it paid off. I don't usually get in a room beforehand. Sometimes I'll send notes on things, on demos here and there, if bands are able to do new demos quickly. Sometimes we restructure stuff after. There's a lot of different ways to do it. I would say Suicide is probably the only time I straight up went to practice.
We wanted that. We're used to that. Like getting a producer in the room with us before we go in the studio and have him watch us jam.
Didn't Machine used to do that?
Yeah, we flew to Jersey to do pre-pro with him. He didn't come to our spot, but we flew to him and did pre-pro with him before we started to record.
Yeah.
But still, you play together in a room with him.
Totally. Very similar. We basically did the same amount that we did with Taylor with Machine. It was like maybe, I don't know, 5 sessions.
We did that with the single. You guys came and we did like a pre-record day here.
Yeah.
Which I think the practice was more efficient.
Oh, 100%.
Going there and just hearing you play the songs, it's like, okay, not only can I get the vibe of the song, I can get the vibe of how the song would feel played on a stage. So, and it was easy to cut down stuff. I think next time I'll just come earlier.
Yeah. Hey, I'm curious, how much more hands-on are you with other bands than you were with us? Were we typical or?
I would say that you were the most that I've ever been hands-on.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, it doesn't surprise me that we're that way. Like we'd let our producers in like that.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't say that other bands would be opposed to that, but I think that it was easy with you guys because we're local too. Like it would have been expensive to fly somewhere else to do that and then maybe come back. I guess it felt the most too because I was actually in your practice space. Whereas I probably have given as many notes to other bands, but just like via demos.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Different bands, though, have different goals and different needs. There's definitely that type of band where when they go to the studio, they've already recorded note for note everything, like those tech bands and stuff.
Yeah.
The good ones that I know, like...
Yeah, I'm not changing a note on a sweep pick, you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
No, go here.
They're open to like anything to do with how the shit is going to sound and like come across. But like when it comes down to the actual notes, it's like this math equation has been solved. There's no resolving it.
No, I don't get a lot of those.
It doesn't seem like that's up your alley too much.
No, thank you.
Yeah, and that's kind of not us either. We're always trying to make everything better. So it's like, as soon as there's somebody that's going to listen to it and give us a second take, we're like ready for it.
Yeah.
That's awesome. One thing that I think is interesting about you having gone to the practice is kind of tied back to something we were talking about earlier, which is that not very many bands in this world are capable of really sounding like bands and doing more of like a live kind of thing on a record. And when you do think of those bands, typically it's actually not really this genre. It's like more like prog kind of stuff, like Opeth. You think of them recording live and could imagine it. Meshuggah did it. Like you think of these like proggier kind of bands. Like you don't think about it so much in this genre. However, I feel like this genre is the one that would sound the best like that because of how the songs work, how the riffs work. Like the arrangements are just designed. They're just lend themselves to sounding huge live. So I feel like you get the most bang for your buck on something like this.
Yeah, it's supposed to be like, oh, this collection of 5 people is audibly whooping your ass. Not how does the computer make it chug? Are all the snares aligned? Like I don't fucking care. I want to know how it's gonna which weapon it's holding to beat me with.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. I've noticed there's been certain bands that toured with that like they sound tremendous live, and then on record it's just like stale. Yeah, like. This is not the band that I've heard 100 times. Like, something is just missing.
Yeah. The mid-range frequencies.
Yeah, Taylor in the mid-range. I think for us, I mean, kind of dating us a little bit, I kind of just remember when the bedroom band kind of came about. I remember when all that was really happening, and you could hear somebody or hear something on, pure volume or something and be like, is that just a dude or is that an actual band? And I've never been a part of a project like that, and just us being dudes that like to jam and come up with stuff. The only idea is learn to be sick and then try to recreate it in audio form. And that's always been the goal, like try to sound as badass as we know we can sound live. And I think that's still the goal. It's still, and trying to refine how sick you are live is going to refine how sick you are on album. Not to say that the other way isn't good, where you're like trying to create, sound that you're going to recreate on stage. I'm sure that works really well for people. It's just never really been the way that we work, and trying to just slam and have it be as just crushing and intense and all on point as possible. And then, be able to somehow capture that and have it so when you put a song on, it's like, boom, whoa, like this is pummeling.
We got that more than ever, I think, too.
I agree.
It's really, really important, though, and it doesn't have to be something that's like written out or whatever, but it's important to like understand that about your own, I guess, identity or sonic personality or whatever you want to call it. Like, I just think it's important to be that clear about it. Like, again, I don't think it needs to be like some mission statement or whatever, like some cheesy thing, but like, what you're supposed to sound like.
I kind of think I think the mission statement, though, I feel like our mission statement is to be a ripping live band. So I think that it is kind of our mission statement. It's like, be just murderous, so that when you have a producer like Taylor or anybody that we've worked with, if they've seen you live, they're like, oh, wow, like I want to be able, it's a fun project for someone to try to capture.
Mm-hmm. Well, I've noticed that you guys have like stuck to that this whole time. Like, I remember seeing you guys on Mayhem tour back whenever that was, like 2008 or whatever, and getting that impression. And then I saw you guys like a year later at Golden Gods and was like, got the same exact impression. And just like I've always gotten that impression. So I admire the consistency, even with like changes in producers, like changes in sound, like experimentation. Still, it seems like the one thing that's remained consistency is how it comes across live.
Yeah, I guess in my head, like not knocking any other way, it's just being a live band is where, especially with extreme music, that's what it's all about. The live setting is where you're going to end up taking that music. We got real close on this. We did the best we've done in a long time. But I'm always like, oh, we're going to sound way better than we sound on record. Like, no matter what, I'll listen to the record and be like, oh yeah, I mean, we're going to people are going to like, if they like these songs, they're going to love this live. It's always been the intention.
Interesting, because that's so the opposite of how so much metal comes off. It's like you hear it on record and it's amazing, and it's just kind of a sad trombone live.
100%. It's been that way for a long time. It's always disappointing when you discover a band and they're awesome on album, but then when you go see them live, they can't do it, or they can't do it consistently. Maybe they're on some nights and off other nights. And I feel like that's super prevalent, or was more prevalent probably and when we were first starting, and it was just all over the place. So I think that foundation of us just knowing what we want out of our live performances, and pretty strictly trying to just recreate this live thing that we do on album, which is kind of difficult to do when you are dudes that play. We try to play dynamically in extreme music. It's not always at 1,000%. So wanting to be able to capture those dynamics, which might be subtle in our style of music. It's not like we're have too much dynamic, but trying to capture, like you said, like a progressive band is more known to do things that are live. But I feel like we've always leaned into the ups and downs of everything and trying to kind of capture an energy almost just as much as capturing sonic frequencies.
Humanity.
Humanity. Yeah, exactly.
It's interesting because I know I've said it's interesting about a lot of stuff, but sometimes people equate capturing humanity or, I don't know, raw or any of those words or terms. It's basically just an excuse for sucking. Like, there's a lot of bands who they will hide behind words like that, but really they're just sloppy. Really, they just sound like shit. But it's raw. No, it's like got a human feel. So we're not one of those polished bands that like grit everything and like sound perfect. It's like, well, you couldn't be, or that would be the only option is because you suck. So a producer would have to do that to you to get you to sound acceptable. Like, just I've noticed that it's actually pretty rare. Like, it's pretty rare for raw to actually be pulled off, I think.
Well, that's the thing is like everybody had to do this at some point.
Yes.
Like it wasn't until 90s, early 2000s that you could grit up a band like this. So it's like, I would say subpar musicians were allowed to come to the front. Whereas it used to be like, if you don't have the fucking chops, you're not going to be able to record because it's going to suck.
Yes.
And it is so dope to see a band kind of quote unquote the old way, you know, like they are a band and they would sound like this no matter what. And that's impressive.
Yeah.
We all, as individuals in our band, we learned it while it was all happening that you could go in the studio and make yourself sound better than you are. And I think we all did that at some point in time in other bands. It's kind of like if you hear something and you're like, oh, you know, that sounds way better than we're able to sound. You shouldn't be doing that. And I think that's just something that we learned along the way, and people need to probably learn. You know, if you're recording,
the veil will lift.
There are some genres that I think are just better suited for recording. There's some types of music where it's like so intricately layered and it's great. It's almost like live is a bonus, but the real art is what you hear through speakers, like in headphones or, you know, just not live.
I can definitely appreciate some stuff like that. Or like yeah, the production is absurd and then the live version is maybe abridged and it's kind of okay sometimes.
Yeah, like there's like I love Dimmu Borgir and I'm not knocking them live or anything, but I love that band. I always have. But look, you can't always tour with 100-piece orchestra. Like it doesn't.
No, you can't ever do it.
Yeah, like it's a special event, and so no matter what, unless you're at like one of those special one-off shows they're doing and filming, like it's always going to be a reduced version, which is not a knock on them at all. It's just like the logistics. It's just not realistic.
The dope part about them was when they do that, instead they're kind of shifting the focus, and live you're not worried about the orchestra so much because they're pummeling you with their open 1-3-4 secret Hatebreed riffs.
Yep. That band has some fucking riffs.
That's probably the highest per capita ripped off band.
Dimmu?
For me and my brother, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I've directly ripped. I still have that riff in my pocket, dude. I'm holding on to it forever.
How could you not? You said Dimmu Borgir and my brain went, shan, zhiga-ding-dang, shan, zhiga-ding-dang.
That's a great one.
Yeah.
You know, but that's exactly my point is like, they are good live, but I wouldn't knock them if they weren't because their records are so fucking great. It's like...
They're dense, yeah.
Yeah, it is what it is. Where I don't like it is where the record's not that great and you can tell that tons of doctoring had to happen just to get past the finish line because nothing was going to happen otherwise. And
yeah. Or it's just got straight fake drums.
Yeah, basically.
That's where I push stop.
Yeah.
Unless you're Godflesh, don't fucking have fake drums.
Well, Meshuggah did it once, and I think it worked, but he injured himself.
Yeah, there was a reason. But then they came back and did the live one, and sounded fucking sicker than ever.
Yeah.
I love that record.
I think when people say to me, yeah, but Meshuggah did it or something, I'm like, yeah, but are you Meshuggah?
No one is Meshuggah. Meshuggah sometimes.
Is the answer to that yes or no? If the answer is no, then...
Yeah, there's only one.
Yeah, basically.
And Meshuggah is still finding themselves.
which is crazy.
It is crazy.
Every record.
I love that about a band or a musician where they have already had more success than is ever reasonable to ever expect out of heavy music.
Out of legitimately just palm muting zero.
Yeah, it's crazy. But somehow they're finding ways and are still hungry to make it better and better and better.
So
Where they
sick.
could have just checked out a long time ago.
They're the example.
That's a gauge of my willingness. Whenever I finish a record, I'm like, how hyped am I to do another one of these? And I still get hyped after we're done recording one. I'm ready for the next one. So still go.
How long does it take you to like recharge the battery, or are you just ready?
I mean, I'm always ready, especially after the pandemic. I kind of learned that I'm the most happy and like balanced if I'm almost always in writing mode. Like I try to never leave writing mode.
Mm-hmm.
Are we in writing mode?
I'm writing lyrics right now.
Wow.
Dude, I have not been playing enough guitar. That's the truth. I've got so much going on.
Well, now you have helm work.
I know. Well, I got tours soon, so I gotta start doing it.
Oh, you gotta start playing the songs you already know.
Yeah, I know. I remember when we finished this record, I was like, I was ready for the next one right away.
You guys were like, let's schedule it now.
I wanted to. I really, really wanted
That's
to.
awesome.
I wanted to. I mean, also from like a business perspective too, because it's a 2-album deal on the label, and I'm like, let's just crack out these 2 records quick and just tour. But yeah, life happens.
It would be cool to have shit in your pocket, but at the same time, now you have time. Time is your friend.
Yeah, I think that, yeah, maybe if that would have happened, we maybe would have wrote a samey record. It would have maybe just sounded a little too close to the way that this one does. And I think the distance and having some new life experiences, I totally believe that like real life totally influences what you're doing. And it's not just music. And
Absorbing other music too over time. You add to the well.
totally. Yeah, you need that time, that space.
Totally. I absolutely agree with you on that. Well, dudes, I think this is a good place to end the episode. I want to thank you both for taking the time to hang out. It's a pleasure as always.
Hell yeah.
Hell fucking yes.
All right, then. Another URM podcast episode in the bag. Please remember to share our episodes with your friends, as well as post them to your Facebook and Instagram or any social media you use. Please tag me at EYAL Levy URM Audio at URM Academy, and of course, tag our guests as well. I mean, they really do appreciate it. In addition, do you have any questions for me about anything? Email them to me at eyal@urm.academy. That's EYAL at urm.academy, and use the subject line, Answer Me EYAL. All right, then. Till next time, happy mixing.
You've been listening to the Unstoppable Recording Machine podcast. To ask us questions, make suggestions, and interact, visit urm.academy and press the podcast link today.